Hi everyone, in this video we're going to talk about application of international trade. This is chapter 9 of the book of Principles of Economics of Gregory. So the first part, it talks about the determinants of trade, which is basically what we have talked before. We had already talked about that. This is the equilibrium without trade. So we're going to emphasize this whole chapter in the analysis of Iceland. This is like the point of this chapter is about steel market. So imagine that there is no import and there is no export. So here we have the basic case where we have price on the y-axis and we have quantities on the x-axis. So we have here the supply as usual is up is like positive slope, and the other is the opposite case, the demand. So here we have the equilibrium. So here we have the Q star and P star. As we know, we have here A, which is considered as the consumer surplus. So remember that the consumer surplus is basically what the consumer they were willing to pay. So all these consumers along the curve, they were willing to pay even a price higher than the competitive price. So this is why it's considered A as the area of the consumer surplus. If you can think about it, it's kind of a safe that the consumer can put away money. And the other part we have B, which is the producer surplus. It is like analogous the case of consumer. The suppliers or producers along the supply curve, they were willing to offer their products even at a higher price. But due to the competitive equilibrium, they are available or they're able to offer products at P star. Okay, so compared with this is kind of benefit. So this is B, this is considered the producer surplus. Okay, let's move on. So here we're going to talk about the word price and comparative advantage. So there are two cases basically. First, we have the first one when the country will become a steel importer, or in the other side, the country could become an steel exporter. So basically what we need to compare in the Iceland price is against the price of steel in other countries. This is like kind of the reference. So we can think about the price, the world price, as a measure where the country, in this case Iceland country, will become an exporter or an importer. So the price prevailing in world markets is known as the world price. So we have two cases here. So if the price, the world price is higher than domestic price, then Iceland will become an exporter of steel. And if you can think about it kind of straightforward, you will see that the price is higher, so they're going to pay your products even to a better price. So in this case, for the country, it's better to become an exporter because they can receive a price higher than the price they received without trade. And in the other case, imagine that the world price is lower. So it means that consumers they're going to face a lower price if they consume the price of the other countries. So in this case, due to the price, the world price is lower than the price in equilibrium, the country, they will become an importer. So at this point, the domestic price is a reference of opportunity cost. So now we will see the gains and losses of the exporting country. So we are now in the first case. So now we're not in the we're now in the first case where the world price is higher than the price in the autarky, or I mean without trade. So we can think about this is so important. Like from the very beginning, we have to think about assumption that Iceland is a small economy. So it means immediately that they are price takers in economy. So what does it mean? Basically, that the country they cannot affect the price of the market. So if they supply zero, or they supply much more than they had before, then there is not going to be any change in the world price. So here we are, remember, we are in the export country, so it means or it implies a domestic equilibrium price is below the world price. So here we have the basic case. We have the supply demand. Here is the case P star, and Q star is the case of without trade. So now suppose that this PT, this is basically the world price. So automatically we see here how, due to the incentive of a higher price, the consumers they have to pay now PT instead of P star. So this is going to be the quantity demanded in the country, in Iceland, which is going to be definitely less than the previous situation, and they have to pay a higher price. On the other case, we have the QB. So QB, as you notice, this is higher than Q star. So it means that producers they can offer the steel to a higher price, so they will naturally they will supply more. So there's going to be QB as the quantity supplied. So this P star is the price before trade, as I said, and PT is the price after trade. So QA is the domestic quantity demanded, and the other case the QB is the domestic quantity supply. So this difference, remember that this is going to be a difference between demand and supply. So this different, this is going to be the quantity exported. Okay, so there is going to be the export of Iceland. So now we will study the welfare of this economy. We will try to figure out if with trade the situation of Iceland is going to be better off or worse off. Naturally, given that trade is better for the country, better for the world, better for everybody, so we'll need to see how the total welfare is improved. So here we have the basic case without trade. So we have Q star and P star as the previous case. Now with trade, now remember Iceland became an exporter, so they're going to offer their steel at a price of PT instead of P star. So here we have QA as we defined before as the quantity demand by the country, by the country. And other case on the other part we have the QB, which is basically the quantity supplied by the country. So as you notice, there's going to be a difference of price. So you notice first that the consumers they have to pay more for the good, but at the same time producers they will receive more for this good. So here we have our table, which basically the table has before trade, after trade, and there is a change. For the case of consumer surplus, producer surplus, and we will measure everything as the total surplus in the economy. So here, as I said before, these are the exports. So we have the price before trade, P star, PT, the price after trade, QA, the domestic quantity demanded, and QB, the domestic quantity applied. So here we have the case before trade. Why? Because we have here the first equilibrium. So at this price, all this triangle is considered as consumer surplus, A plus B plus C. On the case, we have the producer surplus, which was E and F. So if we just like sum up all these welfare from the consumer and producer side, we will finally have this A, B, C, E, F uh, total welfare for the economy before trade. After trade, what do we have here? Basically, the consumer they have to pay a price of PT. So in this case, they're going just to have this triangle, this consumer surplus. So it is going to be just A. On the other side, the producer surplus is going to be all these. Why? Because they are going to produce at this level PT. So instead of supplying at these levels along the curve, they will be able to offer the product to the price PT. This whole triangle is the producer surplus, B plus C plus D plus E plus F. So this is going to be all total surplus. As you know, the consumer surplus, they will lose B and C. They won't have any more due to the change of the price. On the other side, we have the producer surplus, which there's going to be the part of the consumer surplus that was a part of them before. There's going to pass to the producer surplus, which would be BC. And this D is new. It wasn't part neither consumer nor producer. So in this part, they will have D, which you know. So as you notice, the trade will will have like at the end a positive change of D. So this is the gain of trade. Okay, but we have to take into account that we are talking about total welfare. So as a total, there's going to be a better situation for everyone, but consumers are worse off. Okay, so maybe not everybody is going to be better, just as the summation of all welfare. So now we're going to, and this is what I said before, trade raises the economic well-being of a nation. We'll talk the other case. So the opposite case of exporter is an importer. So we have an assumption again that Iceland is a small economy. The price takers in the economy. It means that they cannot change the price levels in the world. So remember that for the case that a country is an importer, it will be the case when the world price is lower than the domestic price. So there are incentives to buy from another countries naturally, because consumers, they will pay less for the same good. So here we have again our normal case. We have the initial point Q star P star, and now we have, instead of previous exercise, we have now a PT, which is the world price lower than the P star, lower than the domestic price. So in this point, as you notice, because of the price is lower than the previous one, the suppliers are going to be they are not going to be like really happy, because they're going to be a price lower, so it implies that they will supply less. So instead of supplying Q star, they will supply just Q B. On B, in the other case, the consumers, as you notice, they will be totally happy, because they want to have a price of P star instead of having PT as a price of reference. So there's going to be this difference. So this is considered, this is going to be the imports. Okay, this difference from QA to QB is going to be considered the import. So as you notice, QB is the domestic quantity supplied and QA is the domestic quantity demanded. So now going to do the same exercise than we did before, but there's going to be the importer case. So here we have the normal case P star Q star, and now there's going to be the change. Okay, so here we have all the stuff that we already know. And now first, what happened before trade? So before trade, consumers had A, okay, they have this triangle before the trade. On the other side we have the producer side. So we have this triangle which is known as the producer surplus. So it's going to be the welfare that they had before trade. So as you notice, this A B C triangle, this was the total surplus before the trade. Now what's going on with after trade? So basically, instead of paying P star, consumers they will pay just PT, and they say instead of consuming Q star, they will consume QA. So this is going to be this new triangle as a consumer surplus. So it's going to be A plus B plus D. The producer surplus, it changed because they had before B and C, and after the trade they're going to be just this produced. So this is going to be this triangle. This is going to be just C. So we have here the total surplus. As you notice, there's going to be a benefit of the consumer surplus. First they have this triangle, then they will have all this one. So as you notice, there's going to be an increase with B and D. Okay, on the other case, producer surplus, they will lose B. Why? Because they had before this whole triangle, and after the trade they will just offer the products at PT, so for quantities QB. So the triangle is going to be just this one, C. So the loss is B. And now this G is going to be the gain of the trade, because it wasn't, or it didn't belong to any part before trade, but after trade it will belong to consumers. So as a total surplus, there's going to be an increase of G. So here, as you know, as a conclusion, we have producer are worse off and consumer better off. This is completely the opposite of exporting, because in the exporting part, remember, we had producer are better off and consumers worse off. And here what we have, is basically this. And as a total welfare, we conclude that trade raises the economic well-being of a nation. And this one, as you know, is the first chapter of Principle of Economics. This is going to be one better conclusion of both parts, for not only for exporting case, but also for importing. This is an importing country. Sorry, there is a mistake here. It's going to be an importing country. So this one is going to be one of the conclusion of the 10 principles of economics. As you notice, trade can make everyone better off. Now we're going to talk about basically taxes, but we don't talk about taxes in international trade as we did in the domestic market. We do talk about tariff. Okay, tariff is going to be our best analysis of increase of revenue of the government from the international trade. It's going to be throughout a tariff. So here we have, there's going to be a tax on imported goods. So what does it mean? It means that basically if the country is exporter, there's going to be no effect. Okay, basically a tariff raises the price of imported above the world price by the amount of the tariff. So if we have the price T, which just simply we make the tariff, it means the new price with PT plus tariff. And now figure out about this important fact. Domestic suppliers of steel who compete with suppliers of imported steel can now sell their steel. Why? Because before, remember that we are talking about the importing country, and in this point there will be a tariff. So it means that the foreigner steel is going to be more expensive. So in this case, the producers, domestic producers, they will have the possibility of compete more in the market due to the higher price in the world. And there's going to be this this domestic that they will compete with the imported steel. So now we are going to make the welfare analysis of a tariff. So we have the main case. Remember Q star and P star. And now there's going to be a tariff. So what does it mean? It means that this is the situation before tariff. This is the price. But after tariff, it means that the government would like to adopt this policy. So the price automatically is going to be PT. So this difference between these two curves is going to be the size of the tariff. And as you notice, here what do we have? Here we have QB, which was basically the quantity supplied by the country without the tariff, with free trade. Due to the increase of the world trade between quotation marks, because it means that just is going to be an increase on tariff, on the price with the size of tariff. So now the suppliers, they can offer a little bit higher their quantities, their steel. So it implies that they will pass from QB to QC. On the other case, we have the consumers. Before trade, they paid P1 at a P1 with quantities A. But given the increase of the price, they will just demand QD. So this is going to be a reduction of this part. So now this is going to be now the imports with tariff, that they are less than the imports without the tariff, which was the difference between QA and QB. So here we have QD, the new domestic demand, as we said before, QC, the new domestic supply, and here now we are going to plug the analysis welfare. So before tariff, consumers, they paid P1, and quantities, they received quantities QA. So it means that they had before all this big triangle, this huge part, A, B, C, D, E, F. So it was automatically before before tariff. The producer surplus, instead, it was just G, because they offer at price P1. Okay, so this is going to be the producer surplus. So government revenue, there isn't government revenue because there isn't any tariff. So the consumer surplus, it was all this triangle plus this little triangle. Now after tariff, consumers, they have to pay, instead of P1, they have to pay PT, which is P1 plus tariff. So they will have as a consumer surplus just AB. Now the producer surplus is going to be this CG. How come? Because basically they will be able to offer the products at price PT with quantities QC. Instead of this P1, they can offer a PT. So this all CG, this is going to be the new producer surplus. What about the government revenue? This is going to be E. Why? Because remember that this distance from QD, the quantity demand, and the quantity supplied, this is going to be the quantity of imports. Okay, this is going to be now the new imports, and you have to multiply this by the size of the tariff. So imagine that there are now just 7 tons, 7 tons of steel, and the tariff is $2 by ton. So automatically the revenue is going to be 7 tons times $2. It's going to be $14 of the government revenue. So this is going to be the rectangle, is going to be the increase or the revenue of the government. So as you notice, it will have AB plus CG plus E. Okay, this is going to be the ACGE. This is going to be the total welfare. So what about the consumer surplus? They will lose C, D, E, F. The producer surplus, they will gain C. The government, they will gain E. But the total economy will lose DF. Why? Because this triangle, there are going to be the quantities, but they are not going to be traded anymore due to the tariff. And in this side is going to be the quantities that they are going to offer a higher price. Okay, so this is going to be the difference. So these D and F, they are called as the dead weight loss from a tariff in international trade. So the tariff reduces the quantity of imports and moves the domestic market closer to its equilibrium without trade. So as you know, this PT is closer than P star than P1 from P star. Now we're going to talk about quotas. So as we said before, the tariffs they are like taxes in prices, but quota is more about quantities. So we are going to limit the quantities. So we are not going to limit the price, but we are going to say that now it's not possible to import more than 5 tons. And it's really interesting because these 5 that we are going to allow to import, they are going to belong to like license holders. Okay, there's going to be the unique people that they can use the import of this good. So let's proceed to the example so it's going to be a little bit more clear. So now we'll limit on the quantity of imports, and the import quota prevents the country from buying as much steel they want from abroad. So there's going to be a reduction of imports. Okay, so the supply is no longer perfectly elastic at the world price. So remember what perfectly elastic means. It means basically that the curve is, the slope is zero. So any change in price, it changes automatically the quantities in infinite. So now it's not gonna be more the case. So now we have here the effects of import quota. Again, we have here the normal case P star, Q star. And remember that we are talking about the importing case. So we are just talking that the taxes, they affect the imports, the quota. So here we have the first A, B, remember. B is going to be the quantity supplied by the producer before the quota, and QA is going to be the quantity demanded by consumers before the quota. Now this is going to be the imports, all these imports before without quota, and now there's going to be a quota. So automatically you just sum the supply curve, you just like sum the quantity of the quota, which is given by quantity, not by price. So automatically the curves will shift to the right. So this is going to be the quota. This is going to be the size of the quota. So here, what are we going to have here? So this PD is now the domestic price with quota. So this is going to be now a change from PT to PD. Okay, there's going to be a higher price from the consumers as expected. On the other side, we have the QD, which it was the this is going to be basically the domestic supply after quota. So there's going to be a change, there's going to be an incentive for an increase of the price from PT to PD. So now there's going to be this QD, which is going to be domestic supply by after quota. So here is interesting because this is the limit. Okay, so until this difference from this to this is going to be the limit of importing. So we cannot import more. After that, there is going to be the same slope as the domestic. So here, this is going to be the new supply curve. Okay, so here is going to be this. After this is going to be this elastic supply. So at this price, there's going to be this. There's going to be no any. There's not going to be any trouble in order to import to this until certain quantity. Which quantity? The size of the quota. After this quantity, there's going to be the same slope of the previous supply curve. So now we're going to talk about the benefits or the changes of the players in this part. So here, first, what was before quota consumer surplus? It was all this triangle, A, C, D, E apostrophe, AE double apostrophe, F. This was all the consumer surplus. The producer surplus, it was just this one. Yeah. The license holder surplus, which is going to be basically the benefit of the people or producers that they will have the possibility of importing. So remember, before quota there aren't or there weren't a license holder surplus. So the total surplus was all this triangle plus G. After quota, so now the consumers, they have to pay, instead of PT, they have to pay PD. So this is going to be the price paid by the consumers. On the other side, we have the producer surplus. It is going to be now just CG. Why? Because they will offer their goods at the price of PD instead of PT, but they're just going to sell QD. So this is going to be the new producer surplus. And now this new player, the license holder surplus. So this is going to be given by this rectangle. Okay, so this rectangle, as the previous one, it was the government. This is going to be the case of holder surplus, because they will have the possibility of importing this quantity of goods, okay, from QC minus QD. So at the end, total surplus is going to be A, B, C, G, and the license holder surplus. So what are the consumer surplus? So they will lose C, D, E prime, E prime, prime, and F. And the producer surplus, they will increase or they will gain C. It wasn't part of them before. And the license holder surplus wasn't in the first explanation, so they will have a net gain E apostrophe plus E double apostrophe. So at the end, we will face a dead weight loss of D and F. It wasn't part before because it's going to be the reduction from QA to QC and the reduction from QB to QD. So here, this is going to be imports with quota, and this all distance the imports without quota. So now we're going to talk about the lessons for trade policy. Basically, from both sides, if the country either import or exporter, the price of steel will be driven to equal the price around the world. So remember, on the side, if they are exporting, so the price there's going to be equal to the export price, and from importing case is going to be the same. So the free trade gives an increasing of total welfare in economy. Obviously there's going to be a change in the consumer and producers, but as a total welfare there's going to be an increase, okay, of all economy. So remember, the best policy will be allow trade without any tariff, okay, and the increased, there's going to increase a variety of goods. So there's going to be a good stuff because there's going to be more trade, more goods that they weren't produced before, and now due to the trade is going to be produced. And definitely there's going to be a lower cost through economies of scale. Remember, economies of scale is basically the more you produce, the less average cost you have. Okay, it's going to be decreasing throughout the production. So this is going to be good because there's going to be the countries that will produce more. And basically it's going to be an increased competition. We'll face basically generally more quality and usually lower price for consumers. And basically the last one, enhanced flow ideas. So when you have new products, maybe you will have more ideas in order to invent another ones from the already invented. What about, there's going to be the other case. Now we figured out how the trade, it was good for the Iceland economy, but there are a couple of arguments which say as hypothesis that the free trade is bad for the government, for the country, sorry. So the first one is the jobs argument. So as you notice, there's going to be a fall of prices. So the industry, they will face a loss of jobs. Because of the fall of prices, the companies, they are not competitive anymore. Now, remember that when Iceland imports from the other country, this one will have resources for buying other products for Iceland. That is true as well. So given that the other country will produce more and Iceland will pay for these goods, they will have more available, more like money available in order to buy products from Iceland. The key fact is that Iceland should specialize in some product due to comparative advantage and not absolute advantage. So as we noticed in previous chapters, it doesn't mean that just one country will produce everything. Then it will be just the case of United States or maybe Japan, okay, or Germany. No, they will produce maybe another goods that they are a little bit more capital intense, but another countries as my country Colombia, they will produce another goods. Okay, so this is going to be more talking about the comparative advantage. Okay, great. So the other argument is the national security argument. So it is basically because maybe you will have the industry is vital for the national security. So maybe in our case of steel, imagine that we are talking about maybe a world war that no one wants, but maybe it's going to be the case. So in this case, Iceland will depend on foreign countries. So in this case, they will not be able to produce guns. So this is going to be an argument of restricting trade. And we know that it will be the incentive to ask for national security in order to not to be affected. Okay, case is the infant industry argument. Okay, so in this case, when we talk about the infant industry, we are not talking about children. No, we are talking about the new companies, new startups. Okay, so in this, or basically startups, because it implies that they are new. So when they have startups, so basically there's going to be a restriction of free trade because new industries, they need time to face competition. But unfortunately, it is really difficult to put in practice. Government has to know which industries are potentially profitable. So it's really hard to know which one is going to be potentially profitable and which not. And then when the new industries in the market imagine that they are now profitable, it's a little bit hard to remove the policy, to remove the restriction, okay, because they already had before, so this is gonna be really hard. And like counter example of this one is the internet industry, because basically there are a lot of startups that they will face a lot of loss, as the YouTube channel, for example. Now the time that I'm using for this video is definitely less for the benefits that economically I'm facing, but it doesn't matter. We hope that someday we are going to break the equilibrium price, the equilibrium point. Let's see if it's gonna happen, or let's if it's not. Okay, and the other one, unfair competition argument. This is basically because, as a fact, there is an unfair competition when there are no the same rules from one country to another. So just like the freight per se, it is unfair because usually the rules or the frame under the trade is given is different. Okay, so for example, if there is a subsidies in one country, in steel country, I mean what in the steel industry, they're going to be definitely more competitive because they can offer a lower price than the world price. So this is going to be the case. So for this, there's going to be no the same rules. But remember that this is a bad policy in total welfare for the country that adopts this policy. However, from domestic as island consumer will benefit. Okay, the other one is the protection, double T, sorry, as a bargain chip argument. So basically, this is kind of like game theory. So this is kind of reciprocal policies. So it's going to be kind of threatened from one country to another. If you charge me a tariff, I will do the same. So I tariff your products unless you take away the tariff on the orders that I produce. So this is going to be a game, but it's kind of like it's going to be kind of bad because maybe it could be the case that both fixed tariff and both will face like less welfare. So this is basically all. I hope you have listened, you have here, because here like a really high rain in my city. There are rainy dog dogs and cats, but I hope you listened and you grasp the idea of this chapter. See you the next videos, and great success with economics. Bye bye.